Hi everyone, welcome to Gadgets with Gurman. I'm Mark, and today we're going to be taking a look at the new OnePlus 5. It comes from an Asia-based phone maker. They've had a few models to date. This is their latest. It comes out this week from their website. We're going to dive into it, but first, the thing we really have to get out there is it looks just like an iPhone 7. So I'm going to hold these up and let's zoom in on it. And you can see that it's pretty much identical. I've seen some people call it an iPhone running Android with the OnePlus skin on top, and that's essentially what it is. This is the iPhone 7. It's the smaller of the two iPhones, but you can imagine if you had the 7 Plus with the dual camera system on the top, it would look absolutely identical besides the Apple logo. They've really taken a lot from this, and we'll take a closer look. Let's zoom out here for now and take a look at on the table. And you can see, like on the design, one of the things that Apple did with the iPhone 7 design, moving from the 6 and 6S, is they moved the antenna bands around the edges. They came out with this new matte black design, pretty much what OnePlus did. And I want to compare it to the OnePlus 3, which was last year's model. And you can see here that it's a big shift. This looked almost like an HTC phone from back in the day, one of the HTC Android phones. Now it looks like an iPhone. So I'm not sure why they're doing this, and I think the funniest part is actually they've been knocking against Apple for the iPhone 7's headphone jack removal, which is old news. People have been complaining about that last year. It's already an outdated thing, and they copied the whole iPhone 7 exterior design essentially, and now they're complaining about Apple not having a headphone jack. It seems pretty ironic and a little funny. But my takeaway on this thing is that besides taking the iPhone 7 design aesthetic and some of the key new features from the iPhone 7, including the dual camera, which we'll jump into, they're actually going to be running behind. They're coming out here in the middle of 2017, and it misses the boat on two of the big new technologies of the year, and we've written a lot about this, and that's OLED displays and much slimmer bezels. So this phone, as you can see, it lacks the slim bezels on the top and the bottom like the Galaxy S8 has, that Andy Rubin's new Essential phone has, and that the next generation iPhone that's going to come out in the fall has. You can see the big fat bezels on the top and bottom. It also has a standard LCD display, so it lacks the OLED technology that the S8 has, as well as the OLED technology that the premium version of the iPhone 8 will have when it comes out later this year. So not only are they copying an older design, but they're going to be missing the boat on the new design trend, on the new technology trends. So it's probably not going to be for a while until next year, their next generation model, that they're actually going to catch up with the latest trends. But that's really always been the point of OnePlus. They were bringing these premium designs, the features, somewhat premium, but pricing it at a non-premium price point. And we'll dive into a little bit of that. So please send in your questions and we'll address those as well. And we already have some coming in here. Is it better now to buy it now or wait for the new version when they're going to be vertically aligned like the iPhone 8? You know, it's to be seen if the vertical alignment of the dual cameras, and this is referring to on the back of the phone, you can see the two camera lenses are horizontally aligned next to each other on the right and left. But on this next generation iPhone, as we reported, Apple has been testing making the camera array vertical, which could result in better pictures, has 3D depth sensing technology. I'm not sure how much of a difference that would make for a OnePlus if it doesn't have that new technology and all those AR features, but we'll see. We have no knowledge if they're already working on a next OnePlus with a vertical lens. So for now, that's not a point that we'll be able to make. And speaking of the cameras, these are 16 megapixels and 20 megapixels for each camera versus the iPhone has a 12 megapixel sensor on both of the two dual cameras. And in my tests, the iPhone's camera, even though the megapixels are a little bit lower, is actually superior. So some of the benefits you get from a dual camera system, and this may be, no knowledge if you've been using an iPhone 7 Plus, you get a depth sensing mode. So you can take a picture and it'll do this bokeh background blur. So whatever picture you take of an object, the background will be blurred. It has a really nice effect from high-end cameras. And another thing you can do with it is you can have deeper zoom. So you have standard 1x zoom, but you also have better zoom when you go to 2x on the iPhone at least. And in the iPhone, you can zoom in all the way to 10x zoom digitally, and it actually looks pretty good. So if you want to take a picture from far away, it looks decent. With the same technology, the OnePlus 5 can do that as well, but the pictures are a little bit more grainy when you zoom in to 8x. So 8x is the limit on the OnePlus, and they're grainier than zooming in on 10x in some picture tests and comparisons I did between an iPhone 7 Plus as well as comparing to the OnePlus 5. In addition, the portrait mode is slightly better on the iPhone 7 Plus. I wouldn't say it's miles better like I would say the camera zooming is, but it's still slightly better on the iPhone. And that comes back to the price. The iPhone starts at $750 for the regular 7 and then north of $800 for the 7 Plus. This phone is $480, which makes it not at a premium price. However, you know going into this you're going to be lacking some of the new technologies of the other phones coming out over the course of the rest of this year and to next year. We have another question coming in here. Does it support the Google Daydream VR headset and Verizon Wireless? So 2 questions in there. First, the Google Daydream supports a very small set of phones right now. It's primarily supporting the Samsung Galaxy S8. They actually announced this in I/O, as well as, of course, the Google Pixel phone. They have not announced any partnership to date with OnePlus. Who knows, maybe they'll open up support for that phone, but unlikely. Of course, you need the software support and the hardware support. A lot goes into it. So if they didn't introduce it for this new hardware iteration, it's unlikely that it would be introduced in the near term, probably next year's model, if any. In terms of Verizon, these phones have world band bands, so you can connect to a lot of GSM networks around the world. Unfortunately, the CDMA bands are not compatible with the US-based Verizon and Sprint towers. So if you get this phone, it's not going to work on Verizon or Sprint. I actually am a Verizon customer, so I had to put a T-Mobile SIM card in this one to get the network working correctly. Another question coming in here. This phone looks extremely identical to the iPhone. Could Apple have grounds for another lawsuit? I think the difference between OnePlus and Samsung, whereas why Apple went after Samsung, is that Samsung is a huge conglomerate. They are an Apple partner. They have insight into what Apple is working on, and this was a multi-year trial. OnePlus is small potatoes compared to Samsung, so who knows what Apple will do, but I would guess that it would be unlikely given that OnePlus is such a small niche player right now, especially in terms of how big the Android ecosystem. It's pretty localized to Asia. That's where you see a lot of these. I know I have some colleagues who use the OnePlus phone. I haven't seen a lot of these in the US, but there were lines in New York yesterday when they first put these phones on sale. In Manhattan. A lot of people are interested in it, but again, it's nothing like a Samsung launch, of course. Another question coming in here, will the iPhone come out with a dual SIM phone? That's a huge advantage in the OnePlus. That's a very good point in this question we received. There is a dual SIM card slot in here, which means this is a perfect phone for a traveler. You could put one SIM card in for the US, you could put another SIM card in for China, and when you're flying between the 2 countries, you can just continue your normal usage and your phone calls and your data access without popping SIM cards in and out. The phone actually comes with a SIM card eject tool like the iPhone has for years, so if you need to do that, it does make it easy, but that is a huge benefit. Will Apple go that direction? I don't know. Apple sometimes likes to jump ahead and remove technologies rather than add additional technologies. It would seem ironic that the company that removed the iPod 30-pin dock connector in favor of the smaller Lightning port and removed the headphone jack would, instead of removing the SIM card slot, add a second one. So I would say Apple sooner would go to a fully digital SIM card model where you can swap SIM cards and data connections on the fly via the software settings menu before they add a secondary SIM card. This does not just seem to be what Apple's about these days. They rather remove different components to add better components in the camera and the processor. So I wouldn't expect that in the near term. Another good point, and this gets back to our show, why is this more expensive than previous OnePlus phones? Well, maybe because of the design, the larger screen, the dual camera obviously adds some component costs. If you remember, the iPhone 7 Plus price was actually higher than the iPhone 6 and 6S Plus pricing when those devices launched, in part because the dual camera system is an extra component. The camera modules are obviously one of the more expensive components in the phones. Adding a secondary one ups the cost. Of course, these players need their margins. OnePlus obviously doesn't have a services business behind it like Amazon and Google, so it can't rely on that. But the drawback here is that at $480, getting a phone that's going to already be outdated in a few months' time, if it's not already outdated now by the Galaxy S8 and the Essential phone, means you might want to take a look at some other phones. And we crunched the numbers, we did the math, and jumping into our pricing guide here, now, the OnePlus used to cost in the $300 range, now it's at $480. The iPhone can cost between $700, $800, $900, depending on which model and capacity you get. However, you might be better off getting a phone in that higher range, the $700 to $800 range, like a new iPhone, the iPhone 8, or the Samsung Galaxy S8, but buying it on a monthly plan. Now, I went on Verizon's website earlier this week, and I saw you can get a Samsung Galaxy S8, the smaller model, which is not all that small, for $380, $390 in terms of total monthly payments over the course of 12 months. So instead of buying this OnePlus for $480 outright, you can buy for $380 per year, cut up in monthly payments, a new Galaxy Samsung S phone every year. So there's some people who might want to be on the cutting edge of technology and get that Samsung phone every year while saving $100. And let's face it, the people who might want to buy a OnePlus phone are those tinkerers, the people really interested in technology. Those are the people that want to be on the cutting edge, to have the latest specs, the slimmest bezels, the sharpest and biggest screens. So it would make sense that those people would want to upgrade their phones annually anyways, right? So it could make more sense to go on a monthly plan, get a new phone annually, whether that's a Samsung phone, an iPhone, or any other type of phone, and actually save some money anyways over the course of a year. So you might want to take a hard look at that. But if you're someone who likes to buy a phone outright, buy the phone unlocked, put it on any carrier you choose, except of course the Verizon and Sprint CDMA towers in the United States, you know, the OnePlus is a decent phone. It has really fast specs. It has a nice screen, even though it's not OLED. It's open to the Android ecosystem. You can put any application you want on it. The operating system skin, which we'll jump into in a minute, is pretty nice. So for $480, it's a decent phone. It's really good. But at the same time, if you want to spend maybe $100 or $200 more maximum, or even around that same $500 price point, if you go to a third party or eBay or something like that, you might be able to find an iPhone 6s from last year for around that price, maybe $100 or $200 more, or an iPhone 6 Plus from a few years ago for around that $500 price point from eBay, or an older Samsung S7 or S6 from years ago. So, you know, it's up to you. If you want to be in that Samsung ecosystem, you might want to look at those older phones in that same price point. Because let's face it, the S8 is a generation ahead in terms of the key technologies. It has that sharper, brighter OLED screen. It has those slimmer bezels. So if you're already going to drop $500 around on a OnePlus, you might want to look at dropping $500 or even a little bit more on that on a Samsung from last year or an iPhone from last year. So it's your choice in the end, but I think there are better ways of getting a really premium phone for this price point. Some other questions coming in here. When you say fast charging, exactly how fast is that? Well, this thing charges really quick. I don't know the exact specs. I'm not going to get into the numbers, but I can tell you that I charged this thing from 0 to about 60% in under a half an hour the other day. So it charges really quick. And that's great if you use your phone the whole day, forget to charge it at night, wake up, you put it in the charger when you take a shower and get ready and whatnot, you're ready to leave your house to go to the office, and your phone is almost charged up for the whole day. And that's a really nice benefit. And that's something that the iPhones have been lacking, this fast charging technology. Hopefully they add it in the end. Now, of course, fast charging is through the connector, right? And another thing that companies are moving toward, Apple's moving toward this with its next iPhone, Samsung moved toward this with the wireless charging, and that's a little bit slower. So the fast charge is something that you're really going to get by plugging it in, and obviously there's a USB cable that comes in the box, so it is pretty convenient. Another question coming in here, how does the dual camera work? Are there two different abilities, macro and wide lens? That's a good question, and we touched on this a little bit. Now, let me open the interface here. You can jump in, and then there's the camera app, and it's similar to an iPhone. You can click the 1x button to jump in 2x, and then you can zoom in to go all the way to 8x. Like I said, the iPhone goes up to 10x, and then you can swipe, and it can go into the depth effect. It's actually pretty similar in terms of interface to the iPhone. Does it work as well? Almost, but not entirely. Also, in terms of the zoom, like we touched upon, I think the iPhone 7 Plus does a bit of a better job. Now, I want to, now that we're in the interface, jump a little bit into our pro tip. So let's zoom into the monitor a bit more so I can take a closer look at this. Now, let's jump into settings here, into the settings menu, and go to display. And this is another new feature, and that's reading mode. So if you remember, the iPhone added night shift, which sort of adjusts the colors of the display to help you sleep better. So they say they have some scientists behind this and whatnot. But this is another mode. This is reading mode. It sort of optimizes when you're reading a web page at night. So you can also set apps that allow you to automatically jump into reader mode every time you open those applications. Or you can turn on reading mode to have it at all times. So you turn this on, and you can see it dims the display a bit It's a little bit easier on the eyes. You can see pretty much instantly. It looks a little bit black and white when you're in many parts of the interface, but if you jump into a web browser here, and let's go into an ESPN article, and I hope Jimmy Butler goes to the Cavs, you can see the text looks a little bit better. It's pretty smooth to read. It looks good. It looks much better. It's nothing fancy, just makes it a little bit more black and white, sort of like in iBooks if you go into night mode there on an iPhone or an iPad. But this is across the system. And it's a similar technology to Night Shift, where they're just changing the underlying colors of the display. It's nothing fancy, but it's a cool addition. So let's zoom back out here. And I have another question coming in here. How does the battery life compare to the iPhone, the Pixel, and the Galaxy S8? Well, the big thing is actually that fast charging technology. The battery life has been pretty good in my real world usage. It can get a full day, just like the iPhone 7 Plus. It has pretty strong battery compared to the Pixel XL, which we've tested in the past as well. When you get to this bigger screen size, this 5.5-inch screen size that you have on this OnePlus 5 phone and the iPhone 7 Plus and a few of the past Plus iPhones, you're getting a bigger battery because they have more internal space thanks to that bigger screen. And obviously they need that bigger battery to drive the graphics, but in the long run, I usually find that you get longer battery life on these bigger phones. Makes sense, and it's one of the big benefits of getting the bigger phones besides the larger displays. Now, it's very important to understand, again, that this phone is coming out at a time when the needle is moving really fast, really forward. The smartphone market, in terms of functionality, has not rapidly changed over the last few years. But with this iPhone 8 coming out soon, the Galaxy S8, this Andy Rubin Essential phone, we're seeing new innovations that we have not seen in the smartphone landscape for a long time. And it's disappointing that the OnePlus 5 is going to miss the boat on those in favor of a slightly lower price, whereas you can get competing phones like older iPhones or Samsung phones for about the same price. I hope over time they improve this phone, they improve the zooming functionality on the camera via software updates. Obviously OnePlus has its fans, it has its own ecosystem, it's very popular in Asia, and I think that the phone has a bright future ahead. That concept of combining a premium handset with a non-premium price is a sweet spot for a lot of people. Just the execution needs to be better nailed on a future OnePlus model, but I think there are some people still who might like this one. This was Gadgets with Gurman, and you can catch us next week.